What if the universe has sent not one traveler but many? What if across the silent gulf of interstellar space a single wanderer is never truly alone? In the deep black where stars burn from impossible distances, there is motion. An object moves through the solar system with the calm inevitability of something born elsewhere. It is 3I Atlas, the third known interstellar visitor, racing on a hyperbolic path no planet could have forged, no star within our system could have claimed. Its speed and direction betray its origin. It comes from beyond, carrying the memory of another sun. But Atlas does not drift in solitude. Astronomers see something stranger. Around it, behind it, and sometimes ahead of it, a cloud of companions takes form. Fragments, wisps, and faint shadows move with it, as though bound by a secret thread. They are like echoes of a voice still speaking, or feathers carried in the wake of a bird crossing endless skies. In ancient migrations, geese traveled across oceans guided by unseen maps written in instinct. Sailors once crossed vast seas with fleets of vessels, each following the same wind. So too, this interstellar visitor appears not as a single ship, but as part of a passage, a movement that suggests pattern, a swarm that suggests intention. And so the question lingers. What is this strange company? Are they remnants torn loose by gravity? Broken shards scattered like dust in the void? Or are they something more? Could they be messengers? Fragments of a story carried across light years, bound together by purpose? The silence of space offers no answer, only the sight of a traveler, and the mystery of what follows in its wake. In late spring of 2024, the quiet diligence of sky surveys was interrupted by something extraordinary. The Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, known as ATLAS, was scanning the heavens with its automated wide-field cameras. Night after night, these instruments sweep the sky for anything that does not belong. Their purpose is to protect Earth, to give warning of comets and asteroids on threatening paths. But on one of those nights, Atlas found something no one expected. A faint streak appeared against the star field. At first, it looked like another near-Earth object, dim and unremarkable. Yet when its path was plotted, the numbers told a stranger story. The orbit was not bound to the sun. It was not an ellipse, not even a stretched oval. It was hyperbolic, an open curve that would never close. Only an object born beyond our solar system could move in such a way. The designation was given, 3I, the third known interstellar interloper, later named Atlas after the system that first caught its trace. The discovery spread quickly through observatories across the globe. Teams at Pan-STARRS in Hawaii, the European Southern Observatory in Chile, and NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory began to verify the trajectory. The data was consistent. Another visitor had come, just as ʻOumuamua had in 2017 and Borisov in 2019. Each confirmation added weight to the revelation that the galaxy was not distant and detached. It was sending fragments of its story into our skies. But with Atlas, there was something different. The automated detection software revealed faint secondary signatures. Tiny fluctuations in brightness, multiple points of light moving not randomly but in eerie relation to the main body. As the days passed and telescopes refined their gaze, astronomers realized that Atlas was not a solitary traveler. It was accompanied. Initial observers logged the anomalies with caution. Were these fragments torn loose by thermal stress as the object felt the heat of the sun? Or were they bodies that had always been with it, following across light years like companions in exile? The scientific reports grew longer, filled with lines of coordinates and velocities. Yet behind every chart was a quiet astonishment. For the second time in human history, a hyperbolic intruder carried with it not just the mark of another world, but the suggestion of a procession. A formation drifting through the solar system, precise and silent as though a story was unfolding beyond human comprehension. The discovery was no longer just of an object. It was of a question written in the motion of a swarm. The universe has always taught its lessons in whispers. When ʻOumuamua crossed the solar system in 2017, it came alone. A solitary shard, silent and fleeting, leaving behind nothing but questions. When Borisov arrived in 2019, it too carried the mark of solitude. Each visitor was a reminder that interstellar wanderers pass through like drifters across an empty desert. One by one, never together. That expectation was rooted in the mathematics of celestial mechanics. Gravity carves paths with relentless precision. An object ejected from the orbit of a distant star does not carry companions for long. Over time, small differences in speed and angle stretch them apart. What begins as a cluster unravels into solitude. By the time such travelers reach the gulf between stars, they are expected to be singular, drifting without company, each one a castaway. So when the instruments confirmed that 3I Atlas was trailed by a multitude, the reaction was disbelief. A swarm was not supposed to exist. It defied the natural grammar of the cosmos. If ʻOumuamua was a solitary word and Borisov a lone echo, then Atlas seemed to arrive as a chorus. The initial suspicion was fragmentation. Perhaps Atlas had broken apart as it felt the warming hand of the sun, just as comets within the solar system sometimes split into streams. Fragments can travel together for a time, bound loosely by momentum and origin. But the pattern here was unnerving. The faint companions did not scatter wildly. They drifted in strange cohesion, like birds maintaining formation even across turbulent winds. Their orbits aligned too closely, as if obeying some unspoken order. Astronomers turned to their models, running simulations on powerful computers. The data suggested a body that had already fractured before entering the solar system. But why then had the swarm retained such order through untold millions of years, and across distances measured in light years? Chaos should have erased such memory long ago. Gravity should have dispersed them into the background of the galaxy, indistinguishable from dust. The shock was not only scientific but philosophical. It forced a deeper question. What exactly does it mean to witness a migration, not an intruder? If one object was chance and two was rare, what does it mean when a procession arrives? The human mind, shaped by millennia of watching patterns in the sky, instinctively searched for meaning. Were these shards or were they a caravan? The European Southern Observatory began to catalog the faintest companions, while the Pan-STARRS array in Hawaii tracked their drift with nightly precision. Each observation revealed subtle consistency, a shared trajectory that should not have survived across the emptiness of interstellar space. In quiet conference rooms, astronomers debated the possibilities. Could this swarm have once been a single comet, shattered by a tidal encounter with another star, yet somehow preserved in cohesion? Or was it evidence of an unknown mechanism, something not yet accounted for in the language of physics? To many, the shock was not in the discovery itself, but in its implications. For centuries, astronomy has been a science of prediction. The planets move where equations say they will. Comets return on schedule, their orbits written in the chalkboard of Newton's laws. But here was a puzzle that strained those laws at their edges. Not broken, not disproved, but unsettled, as if the universe had revealed a loophole in its own book of rules. One astronomer, writing in a late-night arc of preprint, compared the event to hearing harmony in what should have been a single note. If ʻOumuamua was a solitary violin and Borisov a lone flute, then Atlas seemed to bring a choir. The analogy was poetic, but it captured the unease of the moment. Nature was singing in chords when physics had prepared humanity only for solos. The emotional weight of this realization sank deeper as the weeks passed. If the swarm was real, then humanity might not be witnessing an accident at all. There was the whisper of coordination, of motion preserved across the gulf between suns. Even if no intelligence guided it, the sight carried symbolic gravity. It hinted at purpose, and the human mind cannot easily ignore such suggestion. The history of science is filled with moments when observation outpaced understanding. The first astronomers to watch Jupiter's moon's orbit were stunned to see miniature worlds circling another world. The discovery of galaxies revealed that the Milky Way was not the whole universe, but only one, among countless others. Now with Atlas there was another fracture in perception, not in scale but in expectation. Not a lone messenger but a multitude, questions multiplied. If Atlas had companions, could ʻOumuamua have once had them too, unseen or lost in detection limits? If Borisov had broken from a family of fragments, had Earth only glimpsed the brightest among them? The absence of evidence no longer felt like evidence of absence. Perhaps the galaxy was alive with swarms, flocks of travelers passing unnoticed except for the rarest of alignments. But beneath the questions lay a deeper current of unease. Because swarms suggest intent. Swarms suggest migration. Swarms suggest the possibility that the solar system was not being brushed by accidents, but by movements older and larger than human understanding. In the halls of research institutions, scientists remained careful, Speaking of probabilities and models emphasizing caution. Yet outside those walls, in the quiet of their own thoughts, some could not help but wonder. Could it be that humanity was not just watching fragments of rock and ice, but the echoes of something larger? A message written not in language but in formation? The shock of Atlas was not only that it had come, it was that it had come with company. And in that company, there was the unsettling possibility that the universe is not only stranger than expected, but perhaps also more deliberate. The night sky, once seen as a still tapestry, was again alive with motion, and the question lingered like a pulse in the darkness. If these are not accidents, then what are they? The first nights of discovery gave way to weeks of relentless observation. The world's largest telescopes, instruments built to pierce the veil of cosmic distance, turned their gaze toward a dim and foreign trail of light. Each machine, in its silence, became an eye for humanity, trying to discern the truth hidden in the shadows of Three-Eye Atlas and its strange companions. The Hubble Space Telescope, orbiting far above Earth's atmosphere, recorded the faint signatures with unmatched clarity. Its instruments traced subtle variations in brightness, the light curves of fragments too distant to resolve directly. Where the human eye would see nothing but darkness, Hubble saw motion. Tiny fluctuations revealed rotation, surface scattering, and the faint presence of dust. The data suggested activity, a quiet shedding of material into the void. These were not lifeless stones. They breathed, if only faintly, in the way comets breathe when warmed by the sun. On the slopes of Mauna Kea in Hawaii, the Subaru telescope joined the vigil. Its wide-field camera captured swaths of sky around the visitor, cataloging each companion fragment with precise coordinates. From night to night, their trajectories were mapped, arcs of motion drawn like invisible strings pulled tight across the solar system. It became clear that the fragments were not scattering randomly. They moved in relation to one another, their courses interwoven, as if bound by an unseen harmony. The Very Large Telescope, standing on the arid plateau of Paranal in Chile, turned its spectrographs toward the swarm. By splitting their faint light into spectra, astronomers searched for fingerprints of chemistry. There, hidden in fragile absorption lines, came hints of water ice sublimating in the warmth of the sun, traces of carbon-based compounds, faint markers of dust grains similar to those found in long-period comets from the Oort cloud. The fragments shared not only trajectory but composition. They were kin. Each observation refined the picture, turning a mystery into a paradox. If these were shards from a single parent body, why had they not dispersed into the background of the stars? Why did they still move in patterned clustering, as though each piece remembered where it had once belonged? Gravity should have unraveled them. Chaos should have erased their alignment. Yet the clustering persisted, structured and coherent, almost defiant of disorder. The light curves revealed another layer of strangeness. Several fragments exhibited synchronized variability, brightening and dimming in rhythm with one another. It was as though they shared the same spin history, fragments of a body that had once rotated as one. The evidence pointed to a common origin, but one that reached deeper than chance fracture. It hinted at a collective memory preserved across the distances of interstellar space. Outgassing left faint tails, ephemeral streams of dust and vapor that stretched like whispers behind the bodies. These tails, though weak, aligned with striking consistency. Each fragment responded to the sun in near unison, as if their surfaces had been sculpted in the same environment, exposed to the same ancient cycles before their journey through the galaxy began. It was less like a broken object drifting apart, and more like a caravan of travelers responding to the same wind. Models were tested. Could such cohesion survive a close pass to another star before arriving here? Simulations suggested otherwise. Over millions of years, even the smallest differences in velocity should have torn the swarm apart. The fact that it remained intact demanded explanation. One possibility was that the breakup had occurred recently, within only thousands or tens of thousands of years, a blink on cosmic timescales. If so, then the parent body might have fractured in the outer reaches of another star system before being ejected into the void. The companions would still carry their original formation, arriving here before time could dissolve it. But the probability of witnessing such an event felt vanishingly small. Why now? Why this close to human observation? Another possibility unsettled the imagination even more. That the cohesion was not simply the product of timing, but of process. That there existed mechanisms not yet understood, forces or dynamics that could preserve structure across interstellar gulfs. Perhaps interactions with magnetic fields, perhaps gravitational tides within galactic arms, perhaps something entirely beyond current models. Astronomers, cautious by nature, recorded their findings in sober terms. The official reports spoke of non-random clustering, possible shared fragmentation history, and coherent trajectories. Yet behind the sterile language was wonder and unease. The solar system had been visited not just by a body from afar, but by a system, a family, a flock. The emotional weight of these discoveries deepened with every observation. Humanity has always read meaning into patterns, stars arranged into constellations, comets interpreted as omens. Here once again was a pattern written across the night, not of human invention, but of something carried across the galaxy. For the first time, humanity was confronted not only with the reality of interstellar wanderers, but with the possibility that they travel in company, that they arrive not as solitary messengers, but as assemblies. It was a challenge to both science and imagination, forcing a reevaluation of what it means to be visited by the beyond. At its heart, the investigation was not only technical but existential. Each telescope, each data point pressed against the boundary of what is known. The swarm was no longer merely an observation. It was a riddle, suspended in the sky, asking whether the cosmos operates with deeper coherence than equations alone can describe. The clustering of Atlas and its fragments became more than a scientific anomaly. It became a mirror, reflecting the human longing to find order in the chaos of the stars, a reminder that even in the silence of the universe, structure can emerge, and with it, questions that reach beyond physics into meaning itself. The deeper the gaze, the more haunting the realization became. This was not random scattering. This was a procession, and in that procession lay a story still waiting to be understood. The mystery of 3I Atlas deepened with every night of observation. What began as an anomaly now unfolded into something stranger, more unsettling. The swarm did not behave as fragments should. Ordinary physics demands that when a body breaks apart, its pieces drift into dispersion. Differences in mass and velocity and angle all conspire to scatter them wide. The solar system is not gentle. Gravity pulls in conflicting directions. Solar radiation pushes with a subtle, constant wind. Every fragment should have wandered its own way, the procession dissolving into silence. But that did not happen. Instead, the swarm seemed to resist entropy. The companions of Atlas remained in strange cohesion, like dancers tracing steps of a choreography too vast for human eyes to follow. The orbits did not diverge. They bent in unison as if responding to some force beyond the familiar pull of gravity. Some fragments behaved more strangely still. They accelerated in ways unaccounted for by solar pressure alone. Light itself can push, photons exerting the faintest pressure across great surfaces. It is why comet tails stream away from the sun, why dust drifts in the solar wind. Yet the accelerations seen in certain companions did not match the expected pattern. They moved with subtle deviations, nudges that seemed deliberate as if guided by something unseen. Astronomers debated endlessly. Could outgassing explain it? Jets of vapor from beneath the surfaces might act as natural thrusters, altering paths in unpredictable ways. But the fragments were too faint, their activity too meager to account for the coherence of motion. The mathematics of chance grew less convincing with every observation, and then came the greater shock. As the swarm approached the inner solar system, more bodies appeared. Instead of fading, instead of thinning, the cloud seemed to grow denser. What was once thought a handful of companions became dozens, dozens became scores. It was as though the closer humanity looked, the more the swarm revealed of itself. The implication was unsettling. A normal breakup leaves fewer and fewer detectable fragments over time. Here, the trend was reversed. It felt less like decay and more like emergence, as though the swarm was not dwindling but assembling. In the sterile language of scientific reports, the phenomenon was recorded as increasing detection of secondary objects with coherent trajectories. But behind the words was unease. It was one thing to witness a body from beyond the stars. It was another to watch that body arrive as part of a growing system, a presence that defied prediction. The question began to surface, whispered first in private conversations, then in cautious speculation. Could it be artificial? No astronomer wanted to speak the word aloud, yet it pressed against the edges of every discussion. The anomalies piled too high, the cohesion too precise, the accelerations too suggestive. Could the swarm be more than ice and stone? Could it be delivery, an intentional dispersal of material into the solar system? For most, the answer was a guarded no. Science demands restraint, evidence, patience, but imagination is not bound by caution. Humanity has long wondered how first contact might appear. A message written in radio waves. A spacecraft detected at the edge of the system. But few had imagined it might come as a swarm, drifting quietly through the dark, hiding its intent behind the guise of natural debris. Even the possibility was enough to stir existential unease. Because if it was true, then this was not simply an astronomical curiosity. It was an encounter, and encounters carry consequence. In the quiet of observatories, some researchers stared at the data with a mixture of awe and fear. The motions on their screens suggested an order that the laws of chance resisted, an order that hinted, however faintly, at design, yet proof remained elusive, buried in noise and uncertainty. The cosmos had offered a riddle, not an answer. For the public, news of the swarm grew in fragments filtered through cautious press releases and speculative articles. Most saw it as another comet, another curiosity passing through. But for those who watched closely, who followed the scientific papers and the whispered debates, the weight of the mystery became clear. Something unprecedented was unfolding in the skies, and no one knew what it meant. The existential resonance was impossible to ignore. Humanity has always searched the heavens for signs of company. For centuries, silence has been the answer. Radio searches found no signal. Telescopes revealed only indifferent stars. But here, in the motion of dust and fragments, was a hint of something that could not be explained away so easily. If the swarm was coordinated, then silence itself had been broken. Not with sound, not with words, but with presence. The implications stretched into uncomfortable territory. If the swarm was a delivery, what was being delivered? Was it material seeding? Organic compounds scattered across systems as a mechanism of panspermia, a way for life to spread between stars? Or was it something darker? A dispersal of probes, machines too small to see, concealed within the guise of natural fragments. Speculation ran ahead of evidence, but the questions refused to be silenced. The mystery was no longer only scientific. It was philosophical, even existential. The swarm forced humanity to confront its place in the cosmos once again, to ask whether the solar system is truly an isolated island, or merely one stop along routes of passage older than civilization itself. The observations continued, each night adding data, each week expanding the catalog of fragments, and with every new point of light added to the swarm, the sense of unease deepened. Because order persisted where disorder should reign, because motion suggested intent where physics predicted chaos, and because silence felt heavier when it was filled with presence. The mystery of Atlas had become something larger than astronomy. It was no longer just a question of what. It was a question of why, and the universe, as always, withheld its answer. The mystery of Three-Eye Atlas and its strange procession could not remain only a matter of observation. The human mind is restless when faced with silence. It demands explanation, builds models, and spins theories to make sense of what appears senseless. And so, in the wake of discovery, speculation began to multiply. The first and most conservative explanations were natural. Perhaps the swarm was nothing more than the remains of a fragile icy nucleus, fractured by the stresses of its journey. Comets within the solar system are known to break apart in spectacular fashion. Shoemaker-Levy 9 shattered under Jupiter's tidal grip in 1992, its fragments later colliding with the planet in a sequence of fiery scars. Comet 73P Schwarzmann-Wachmann 3 disintegrated into dozens of pieces in 1995, leaving astronomers astonished by the violence of its unraveling. Could Atlas be another example? An interstellar body that had simply fractured and held its companions close, at least for a time. It was plausible yet unsatisfying. Such breakups produce chaos, not order. The fragments scatter, diffuse, and vanish into the background of space. They do not maintain formation across light years of distance. To believe Atlas was only another fractured comet required stretching chance until it felt improbable. Other theories turned to gravitational interaction. Perhaps Atlas had once belonged to a star system not unlike our own, its path altered by a near pass to another sun. In such encounters, tidal forces can tear bodies apart, ejecting fragments into the interstellar medium. If the event had occurred recently, within tens of thousands of years, then perhaps the cohesion of the swarm might still be preserved. But recent in cosmic terms means improbable in human ones. What were the chances that Earth would look skyward at precisely the right moment to witness such an unlikely alignment? The odds seemed almost mocking. Some proposed that radiation pressure from starlight might create illusions of clustering. Photons, though massless, exert a measurable push, and over great distances the effect can alter the trajectories of small fragments. If the bodies within the swarm were of similar size and composition, they might respond to the same invisible hand, giving the appearance of cohesion. Yet simulations suggested otherwise. The differences in brightness, in mass, in surface texture would produce diverging paths, not converging ones. The explanation fell short, leaving the mystery intact. As natural explanations strained under the weight of data, more exotic ideas began to stir. One suggestion was that the swarm was a relic of a destroyed planetary system. Perhaps a world long shattered by stellar catastrophe had cast its remains into the void. The fragments, carrying with them the memory of that system, might have drifted together across the galaxy, arriving here not by intention, but by accident of cosmic winds. In this view, Atlas was not simply a comet, but a tombstone of a world no longer whole, a grave marker written in ice and dust. Others dared to wonder if the swarm was not entirely natural at all, that perhaps the fragments were messengers, probes disguised as debris, slipping unnoticed into the solar system. The idea was not new. For decades, thinkers had speculated that advanced civilizations might scatter self-replicating machines, von Neumann probes, across the stars. Such probes, small and hidden, might masquerade as asteroids or comets, watching silently as they passed through alien systems. To some, the cohesion of the Atlas swarm whispered of such possibility, that in their silence these companions carried more than ice. They carried intention. The notion was provocative, yet fraught with caution. Science does not leap easily to extraordinary claims. Most astronomers urged restraint, warning that human minds are eager to impose design upon disorder, but others, more daring, spoke more freely. Avi Loeb, the Harvard astrophysicist who had stirred controversy by suggesting that ʻOumuamua might be an artificial object, stepped once more into the discussion. To him, Atlas was not merely a curiosity but an opportunity. If ʻOumuamua had raised the question of artificiality, then a swarm raised it louder still. The possibility that a coordinated procession could drift across the solar system was, in his view, not to be dismissed. It demanded investigation, even if the conclusion proved natural in the end. Loeb's words echoed widely, both inspiring and dividing. Some hailed the courage to ask questions others feared. Others dismissed it as premature, a leap beyond evidence. But his voice ensured that the discussion could not be confined to the safe boundaries of conventional explanation. In the shadow of his speculations, another analogy emerged: the concept of Dyson swarms. Freeman Dyson had once imagined that an advanced civilization might surround its star with countless satellites, harvesting its energy in a sphere of orbiting machines. To some, the cohesion of Atlas hinted at a similar kind of design, though far smaller in scale. A formation that, whether intentional or not, carried the suggestion of order imposed upon chaos. The comparison was haunting, because if such things could exist around distant suns, why not in motion between them? The wider community, cautious as always, reminded the world that science proceeds by evidence, not by wonder alone. Yet evidence itself was ambiguous. The swarm remained coherent, its fragments numerous. Each telescope added new data, but the data only deepened the paradox. Natural models bent under the strain, and exotic models demanded courage few were willing to claim. Beneath the scientific debate lay a deeper truth, that the swarm, whatever its nature, had forced humanity to look differently at the cosmos. It had revealed that even the most basic assumptions, that interstellar visitors come alone, that chaos rules their fragments, could no longer be trusted. The universe had shown its capacity for surprise once again, and with surprise comes humility. Perhaps Atlas is only ice and dust shaped by forces not yet fully understood. Or perhaps it is something more, a messenger cloaked in silence, passing through on a mission written in physics, humanity has not yet learned to read. In either case, the theories and speculations reveal less about Atlas itself than about those who gaze upon it. For in the swarm, scientists see not only fragments of matter but fragments of possibility. Each explanation, natural or exotic, becomes a mirror of human longing. The longing for order in chaos, the longing for company in silence, the longing for meaning in the endless night. The cosmos offers no answers, only riddles carried in the wake of interstellar wanderers. And 3i Atlas, with its strange procession, remains one of the most haunting riddles yet. The mystery of 3i Atlas and its strange procession could not be answered by wonder alone. It demanded tools, the most advanced instruments humanity has built. The machines that extend vision into wavelengths beyond sight were now turned toward a question older than science itself. What passes through the night and why? On the desert slopes of northern Chile, the Vera C. Rubin Observatory prepared to begin its watch. Equipped with the largest digital camera ever constructed, it was designed to capture the entire southern sky in sweeping exposures every few nights. Its purpose was to track the faintest motions, to map the changing heavens with a precision no human eye could match. For astronomers studying Atlas, the observatory promised more than photographs. It promised the ability to catch faint companions, the dimmest echoes trailing behind the brighter fragments. With each pass of its gaze, the swarm could be revealed in greater detail, each new detection filling in the tapestry of the unknown. High above Earth's atmosphere, another sentinel turned its mirrors to the visitor. The James Webb Space Telescope, with its golden array of hexagonal eyes, peered not in visible light but in the deep glow of infrared. There, in wavelengths invisible to humans, the signatures of molecules emerged. Webb's spectrographs began to dissect the faint radiation streaming from Atlas and its companions, searching for water, carbon monoxide, and organic compounds. Infrared light betrayed the chemistry of the fragments, their hidden ingredients preserved from a birth in another system. In those spectra, scientists hoped to find not only composition but history. Were these fragments kin to comets of our own Oort cloud? Or did they carry traces of environment stranger still, shaped by stars unlike the sun? But telescopes, however powerful, could only watch from afar. Some began to argue that watching was not enough, that if interstellar visitors carried answers, humanity must go to them. Rapid response missions were proposed, spacecraft designed to launch at short notice to intercept objects like Atlas before they slipped away forever. Concepts were drawn, trajectories calculated, engines imagined that might chase the fleeting paths of wanderers from other suns. Yet timing was the enemy. By the time 3i Atlas was discovered, it was already racing inward, its trajectory known but its departure inevitable. Within months it would swing past the sun and be gone, accelerating back into the abyss beyond the reach of pursuit. To chase such visitors would demand readiness humanity does not yet possess. The frustration was palpable. It was like glimpsing a messenger passing in the night, its message half seen, its language fading before it could be understood. Each interstellar traveler arrived unannounced, stayed briefly, and was gone. Science could only scramble to catch fragments of truth, piecing together meaning from the faint traces left behind. On the ground, supercomputers became laboratories of imagination. Swarm dynamics were simulated in endless variations. Thousands of digital fragments were set adrift in models, their paths altered by the pull of gravity, the push of radiation, the chaos of interstellar tides. Each simulation tested whether natural processes could reproduce the coherent scene in Atlas. Most ended in dispersion, the fragments scattering, fading, dissolving into emptiness. Only rarely did patterns survive, and even then, they bore little resemblance to the strange clustering observed. The gap between nature and observation remained wide. The debates grew sharper. Some scientists urged caution, reminding the community that data is imperfect, that faint signals can deceive, that human pattern seeking is relentless. Others pressed the opposite view, that anomalies must be confronted directly, that unwillingness to imagine beyond the ordinary would blind us to the extraordinary. In quiet papers and careful talks, the central question emerged: how does one distinguish natural fragmentation from deliberate construction? It was not a question of proof but of method. What evidence would be enough to move from speculation to conclusion? Would symmetry and trajectory suffice? Would identical composition across dozens of fragments hint at more than chance, or would it require a signature undeniable, the unmistakable mark of design written in the very structure of the swarm? The debate was as much philosophical as scientific, for it forced humanity to ask not only what the swarm is, but what evidence it would accept if the answer was not natural. Instruments like Rubin and Webb would continue to search. Simulations would continue to refine, and proposals for rapid response missions would gather momentum, driven by the urgency that these visitors never wait. But the swarm of Atlas had already forced a shift. It had made clear that the solar system is not isolated, that the galaxy is not silent. Objects from other stars pass through, carrying with them stories written in trajectories and spectra, stories humanity is only beginning to read. The investigation into Atlas was not merely about one interstellar visitor. It was about preparing for the next, because there will be others. And when they come, the tools humanity builds now will decide whether their mystery remains a riddle in the dark, or becomes an answer at last. The silence of the universe is vast, but silence does not mean emptiness. It means listening is not yet enough. And with Atlas, the lesson is clear. If the truth is to be known, it must be pursued. For the fragments of other worlds will not wait. They pass, they vanish, and they remind us how fragile every chance at discovery can be. In the natural world, patterns of many become more than the sum of their parts. On Earth, flocks of starlings wheel across the twilight sky, thousands of wings folding and unfolding in synchrony, each bird reacting to the motion of its nearest neighbor. Schools of fish slip through the ocean like liquid silver, turning with one mind though no voice directs them. Bees swarm as though guided by invisible geometry, their motion both chaotic and ordered, a living cloud with hidden laws. From the smallest insect to the greatest migrations of mammals, swarms are a language written into life itself. They are the expression of togetherness, the instinct that survival lies not in solitude but in the collective. And now, in the skies above, there appears another swarm, not of wings or fins but of icy fragments from beyond the sun. 3i Atlas and its companions drift through the solar system, not as a single object, but as a many-bodied chorus. Their cohesion whispers of rules we do not yet understand. Their presence evokes the memory of earthly swarms, as if the same deep grammar of gathering stretches from the forests and seas of Earth into the cold reaches between stars. To some, this resemblance is humbling. If the swarm is natural, then it reveals the universe as a master of patterns far more complex than human minds can anticipate. It would mean that even in the void, chaos can conspire to create beauty, that fragments torn from a comet or scattered by a stellar tide can maintain a collective form across distances unthinkable. It would remind humanity that what seems improbable is not impossible, that chance itself can weave order when given the loom of time. But to others, the resemblance unsettles. Because swarms on Earth are never without reason. They are survival strategies, ways to navigate danger, to hunt, to travel. If the Atlas swarm is not natural but artificial, then its cohesion might be more than coincidence. It might be intention, and intention implies intelligence. The thought is both intoxicating and terrifying. If the swarm is the work of minds older than our own, then it is not simply a visitor. It is a message. A reminder that intelligence does not always arrive in signals or spacecraft as science fiction once imagined. It may arrive disguised as fragments drifting in silence, their very motion the only language offered. To recognize such a message would be to confront the possibility that humanity is not the first to build patterns in the dark. That others long before us learned to scatter swarms as seeds, as probes, as messengers across the stars. In either case, whether natural or artificial, the lesson is profound. Because the meaning lies not only in what the swarm is, but in how it reshapes human perception. For centuries, humanity has gazed into the night sky and wrestled with solitude. Are we alone? Is the universe indifferent? The silence of the stars has always pressed heavily upon the human spirit. But with Atlas, silence takes on a new form. It is not absence. It is presence without explanation. It is company without comprehension. Perhaps the greatest meaning of the swarm lies in this, that it forces us to see ourselves in the mirror of the cosmos. On Earth, life gathers, travels, swarms. In space, fragments do the same. Whether by chance or by will, the result is the same. Togetherness written across the void. It reminds us that the universe is not a place of isolation but of patterns, of echoes that repeat across scales too vast to measure. As the days pass, Atlas and its companions slip deeper into the inner solar system. They cast faint shadows against the stars, their tails drawn out by the breath of the sun. Each fragment glimmers briefly, then fades back into darkness, leaving astronomers to wonder how many remain unseen. The swarm is both real and elusive, both charted and mysterious. It lingers as a reminder that the universe is alive with motion, with visitors that do not fit within expectation. Soon, it will be gone. Its hyperbolic path ensures that it will not return. Like ʻOumuamua and Borisov before it, Atlas will vanish into the deep, carrying with it the questions it stirred. But unlike them, it will not vanish as a solitary traveler. It will leave behind the memory of a swarm, a procession that defied the laws of chance and left humanity haunted by its meaning. The lesson of Atlas is not in certainty, but in wonder. Whether natural or artificial, its passage tells us the same truth. The universe is not empty. It is not silent. Every so often it sends messengers across our sky, reminders that we are part of a galaxy in motion, that what we call solitude may only be ignorance, that in the long history of stars company may be written in ways we do not yet know how to read. The swarm fades into the sun's glare now, countless fragments shimmering like dust in a cathedral of light. Soon it will pass from view, slipping back into the dark from which it came, but its memory remains. A story of fragments, of togetherness, of questions that stretch beyond science into the marrow of what it means to exist. In the silence of space, the swarm leaves no sound. Only shadows, only patterns, only the reminder that the cosmos is never truly still. And in that reminder lies its gift, that the universe, vast and indifferent as it may seem, is never truly empty, never truly silent, always alive with motion, always capable of surprise.